intuition, what is the intuition behind ensembling the model is this. So this is something very naturally we also try to do. Say for example, I wanted to buy a new car, and what we will usually do is that we wanted to get opinions. Either we will go to online reviews and read what people have commented about that car, or say for example we don't have such option of looking through online reviews. So what we will do is that we will go and ask to our friends or neighbors or family, and we take their opinion. And finally, what we make the decision is that what majority of the people have suggested to go for a specific model. And that is the model that we would eventually decide upon, because we gain more confidence, because there are so many people who are giving a better opinion for that. So that is the model that we are adapting here as well. So this is where the ensampling is. So we use several machine learning models for one specific problem, and then we sort of aggregate the result by all these models. So this approach is called ensemble approach. So to understand the intuition behind how ensemble learning approaches work, so let us first look at one specific approach called voting classifier. Let us assume our task is classification problem, and we wanted to classify, so say for example, these blue circles. I think somebody's mic is not muted. So in these data, let us assume it is a binary classification problem, and these blue circles are spam mails, and these white circles are non-spam mails. What we can do is we can use a logistic regression model, since this is a binary classification. So you can use a logistic regression model to make these predictions. You can train a binary classifier. Say for example, we use another SVM classifier to perform this classification. Say for example, we use another type of a machine learning model called random forest classifier, and others. And what we eventually do is that we would go for a majority voting. So now we will see what is the result predicted by majority of the uh, predictors. Say for example, out of 3 predictors, if 2 of them are saying it is a spam and the one is saying it is non-spam, then we would go for this majority voting scheme. So that is what generally the idea is. So you have your training data set, you train multiple types of machine learning models, and then you aggregate the result of those machine learning models. So this is essentially called the voting classifier. In this voting classifier, what we do is that we fix the training data set, we keep changing the uh, machine learning models, so logistic regression, support vector machine, maybe decision tree, and so forth. This was the initial idea of ensemble learning, but later research has shown that this particular approach is not very robust. So what so this is what I was saying. So if you have 4 predictors, so the individual models, we can call it as predictors. So there are 4 predictors, and the majority of them are saying it is class label 1, and only one is saying it is class label 2. So we go ahead with 1 as the class label. So this is what the majority voting scheme does. We in ensemble learning, when we go for classifiers, we are essentially using majority voting, but there is a small difference. What researchers have analyzed is that if you train multiple models on the training data set and aggregate the result, the performance generally is not that great. But instead, if you fix the model and train multiple predictors of the model, then that leads to better predictions. So that technique is called bagging. So in bagging, what we do is that we fix the type of the predictor. So let me just, so I will come back. So let me just say, so we fix the type of the predictor. So if we are, say, for example, want to use logistic regression, then you have logistic regression 1, logistic regression 2, logistic regression 3, and so forth. So we use a same type of model. But the catch is that if we use the same type of model and if we fix the training data set, then how will first model will be different from the second model? It cannot be different because you are training it on the same training data set. So there is a challenge how to train such a model. So in this scenario, we fix the training data set, we keep changing different types of machine learning approaches. But in the bagging, what we do is that we fix the machine learning approach, and to make them different, what we do is that we train it on different subsets of the training data set. So that would make individual predictors different. So this is the idea behind bagging. So there are two approaches there, where in the case we are fixing the type of the machine learning model. Say, for example, if you fix support vector machine, then you can decide, I will train 5 different support vector machines, and each machine will be trained on a random subset of the training data set. So that is the idea behind bagging. And this is also an ensampling approach. And the research has shown that bagging approach outperforms the previous voting based category, where we use multiple types of predictors. So there are two concepts generally that we come upon. So one is called bagging and the other is called pasting. So this is related with when we are taking random subsets of the training data set, whether we put it back or not. So if you put it back, then it is called bagging. Otherwise, it is called pasting. But even within these two kinds of approaches, bagging is the most commonly used, and it is usually the one which is giving best performance. The bagging stands for bootstrap aggregating. So it's the short form for bootstrap aggregating, that is called bagging. So the idea is, let us assume we fix the type. Say, for example, we fix this as logistic regression. So we have 4 logistic regression models. To make those 4 logistic regression models different, what we have to do is that we will take a random subset of our training data set. So we take a random subset, we train our first predictor on that. We take another random subset, we train second predictor on that. Since the training data sets are slightly different, these models are also slightly different. We take the third model, train it on a random subset. So you keep on doing this. So you keep on ensampling multiple predictors, or train multiple predictors which is of same type but trained on various random subsets of the training data set. And the prediction is based on aggregation. The aggregation, in the sense, if it is a classification problem, then we look at the majority voting, that is the mode. So in a given list, which one appeared more frequently? So that is this mode information. And if it is a regression problem, so that you will be getting continuous value prediction. What we will do is that we will take the average of the prediction. So if it is like height prediction, so all the 4 models will be giving 4 height values. So we will average that, and that average height is going to be the model's prediction. So the research has shown that these kind of ensambling approach outperformed the previous types of ensampling. So we fix the type of the predictor, but train it on different random subsets of the training data set. So this approach is called bagging. So Is there any doubt related with this?
Yes, sir. Can you, sir, explain again the what is the meaning of replacement of sampling?
Say for example, if we take 5 uh, samples randomly from the training data set for the first predictor, let us say we took 5 samples from the training data set. For the second one, when we are taking the random subset, these 5 will not be included any longer in our training data set. So those 5 data set will be removed. Is that clear? So that is called pasting. In
Okay, sir.
bagging, yeah, we will put it back so that maybe there are some samples which are common in these two or between these two. That is allowed. That approach is called bagging. So that is the replacement strategy that we are talking about. I hope that is clear.
Yes, sir. Clear.
Yes. So here, if we decide to bag logistic regression model, then it will be all logistic regression. If we decide to bag support vector machines, then it will all be support vector machines. If you decide to bag decision trees, then it will all be decision trees. So how to apply this bagging? So there is a class called bagging classifier, which is defined inside the scikit-learn's ensemble module. And we have to decide what type of model we are going to bag. So here in this example, I am going to show we are going to bag decision tree classifiers. But you could as well have bagged logistic regression or support vector machine or naive Bayesian classifier, whatever type of classifier you want. So now when you create an object for the bagging classifier, you have to specify which classifier to bag. So here we are bagging decision tree classifiers. And we are saying that we have to bag 500 decision trees. So that is the number of estimators we mean. So we are going to bag 500 decision trees. And when we take random subset of our training sample, we allow a maximum of 100 training samples. So when we are taking a random subset, it will never exceed 100. So you can explicitly control this. And we say when we say bootstrap is equal to true, then replace is allowed. So we will be replacing it. And here is an additional argument called n underscore jobs, the number of jobs. And if you put the value as -1, it is self-explanatory. So let me just go back here. Say, for example, you are bagging 4 decision trees. So this is decision tree 1, decision tree 2, and so forth. And you have taken 4 random subsets. Training decision tree 1 or the training decision tree 2, they are not dependent on each other, right? So this is the training for first decision tree is independent of the training for second decision tree. The second one is independent of third, or any predictor is independent of others. So in such scenario, what we can do is that we can actually train these predictors in parallel. So we can, so there is an advantage that we can train them in parallel. So if we have parallel computing facilities, we can train these models parallel. That's what this number of jobs is equal to -1 means. So if we have multi-core processors like octa-core or quad-core, then it will, the scikit-learn module will automatically find out how many parallel processing can be done for that particular processor, and then it will automatically perform parallel processing. So the number of jobs that will be parallelly run or trained will be automatically calculated. So that is what we specify as -1. So once we have created that model, then it is very much similar to what we have done previously. So you can fit the model. So that is you are training using your 80% training data set. So what happens is that you are training 500 decision trees. That's what happens here. And you can, if you want, you can make predictions, or you can even obtain the score. So it's all the similar strategy that we are familiar with. So this kind of technique outperforms the previous type, where we try to ensemble different types of predictor. Instead, if we ensemble a same type of predictor but train it on random subsets, then that seems to be the best performing model. So here you could, if you want, you could have bagged support vector machines, or uh, naive Bayes. So the thing is, the bagging is a general approach. You can bag any type of models. Out of different types of bagging, it has been found that if you bag decision trees, that performance is much better than any other type of bagging classifier. So here what we have done is bagging decision trees. So bagging decision trees has a different name, which is called random forest. So what it means is that a collection of tree is something that we call as forest. So when we are bagging decision trees, it becomes a collection of trees. Here it becomes a collection of 500 trees. So we call it as a forest. And each tree is trained on a random subset of the training data set. So that is why it is called random forest. So that is the significance behind this name. So this is nothing but bagging decision trees. So that has a special name called random forest. And this is one of the best performing machine learning model. Say, for example, for several years, random forest happened to be the state of the art approach, and it was like in the #1 position compared to all other machine learning techniques when it comes to dealing with very complex problems, or highly nonlinear data set as well. So random forest happened to be at #1. Why I say it happened to be at #1? Because later research pushed it one level down. So now random forest is sort of rank 2. So there is another approach which is at rank 1. That approach is called boosting, that we will discuss as a continuation of this. But at least random forest has got its own uh, uniqueness, and it stands out for certain problems. Random forests do outperform other types of approaches. So an ensample of decision trees is called a random forest. And since random forest or bagging decision trees is a very powerful approach, scikit-learn decided to have a special class for the bagging decision trees that is called random forest. And you can use random forest for both classification as well as regression. So if you bag decision tree classifiers, it is random forest classifier. So if you bag decision tree regressors, then it is a random forest regressor. That's the only difference. So within the ensemble module of scikit-learn, we have a random forest classifier. And here you can say how many estimators you wanted to bag together. So how many ensemble you need. So here you can specify 500. And here, each decision trees, you can explicitly control and say that we only need a maximum of 16 leaf nodes. You see, either you can control it based on the depth, or you can control it based on the leaf nodes. So here I'm showing an example where we can control it based on the number of leaf nodes as 16. So the tree will never grow beyond that once it reaches 16. And bagging is always the individual estimators are independent of each other, so we can always train them in parallel. So here is an advantage: you put n jobs as -1, so it automatically finds out how much it can run in parallel, and it will optimally train it. So once you once you create the object for random forest classifier, then it is all easy. So you just call a fit function. So fit is nothing but training. So you train it using the training data set, your 80% training data set. And you can predict or you can estimate the score exactly like what we did previously. So this idea is called random forest. Is there any question related with this? The bagging as well as the random forest. The decision tree bagging is otherwise known as random forest. Okay. And now, as I said, it was number one for several years. And then another interesting idea was introduced, a technique called boosting. So this is along the line of bagging, but there are differences. This is also ensembling, grouping together multiple predictors. One important difference is that here individual predictors are not independent. So that is a different kind of an idea. And the results of boosting outperformed the results of bagging decision trees. Even it outperformed a random forest. And in boosting also, we make use of decision trees. So for both bagging and boosting, the underlying machine learning model is decision tree. A single decision tree by itself is not powerful, but you ensemble decision trees, then it becomes extremely powerful than other type of models. Even when you ensemble other type of models, the decision tree ensemble outperforms others. So what the idea behind boosting is that the general theory is you are training weak learners, and all these weak learners together will lead to a strong learner. So this is the fundamental idea behind boosting. So how do we understand what do you mean by weak learners? In case of bagging or in random forest, there is no concept of weak learners, or there is no individual decision tree is considered as a weak decision tree. But when we come to boosting, individual decision trees inside the ensembling is considered a weak model, but they all together becomes a strong model. It will be obvious as once we understand the way, the fundamental working principle behind boosting. So there are prominently two types of boosting techniques that is widely used. One is called AdaBoost, the other one is called gradient boosting. So these are the two types. And in rank number one, as of now, from the non-deep learning based techniques. So these in the classical machine learning techniques, this gradient boosting is rank one as of now. And these three classical machine learning models, namely the support vector machine, both linear and kernel support vector machines, then random forest and gradient boosting. These three are considered very powerful machine learning models, and many of the commercial AI applications are actually powered by a combination, any one of these or a combination of these models. So it's very important to understand the working principle behind support vector machines, bagging and boosting. Many of the commercial applications are powered by that. We might be misled, like with the development of deep learning, we might think that many of the commercial applications are using deep learning, but that is not true. The commercial applications primarily depend on the advanced classical machine learning techniques like SVM, bagging and boosting. Deep learning is still a research domain. So there are a lot of challenges to be addressed in deep learning. But that is not the case with classical machine learning. It has been researched over several years, and many of the algorithms are very mature. The only downside is that they don't do automatic feature engineering. So that is the only place where deep learning outperforms these classical approaches. Otherwise, if you explicitly know what are the good features, and if you are able to derive features, then definitely it is worth considering bagging and boosting techniques. So now to understand the working principle behind boosting, so let me first address what is adaptive boosting technique. The idea behind uh, combining weak learners to form a strong learner. An important fact to remember is that the independent learners or individual learners are not independent of each other. When you say you wanted a boosting model with the decision trees, then all of them are decision trees, similar to a random forest or a bagging approach. But the training is very different. Let us say, for example, a regression problem. So let us consider a regression problem. And we are training our first decision tree. So our first decision tree is able to address maybe all these points, but it is not able to address very well this particular point from our training data set. So we are not taking any random subsets here. So the random subset concept is only with bagging. In boosting, we do not take random subsets. In adaptive boosting, the way we handle the training data set is like this. So we will first train the first model, and we look at what samples the first decision tree is not able to address well. And what we will do is that we give high weight to samples that the first one couldn't do well, and low weights to other samples which the first one was doing well. And now we are going to train the second decision tree in this particular setting. The sample or whatever the previous decision tree was not able to address well, that is given more weight, and we train the second decision tree to address the shortcomings of the previous decision tree. So once we do that and train it, maybe this decision tree is able to address well all these samples because we assigned more weight to these samples. So we ended up addressing all these samples well. But now the second decision tree had limitations. It was not able to address these three samples well, or there are some samples that the second decision tree couldn't address well. And what the technique will do is that now assign more weights to samples that the second decision tree was not able to address well, and less weights to samples that it was doing well, and train the third decision tree, and so forth. So we keep on progressing like this. This approach is called adaptive boosting. So when we say what is intuitively happening here, we are training new predictors to address the shortcomings of the previous predictor. So every individual predictor has its own limitations. That is why we call them as weak learners. But as a whole, they become a strong learner because each of them are trained to address the shortcomings of the previous one. So when they are grouped together, they become a strong learner. So this is the idea behind adaptive boosting. So the library takes care of assigning these weights and making all these adaptations. Another challenge with boosting is that since the second decision tree depends on the first decision tree's shortcomings, we cannot train them in parallel. But that was not the case with bagging. In bagging, there is no concept of the second decision tree trying to address the limitation of first one. They are independent of each other. So we could train them in parallel. But in boosting, that is not possible. So this is in terms of training time, boosting will take more training time than what bagging does, because this is a sequential training process. It's a sequential ensampling process, the boosting. But bagging is an independent ensemble process, so we could train them in parallel. So that is a parallel training process. Here it is sequential training process. So if you want to, so AdaBoost also has both variations, classifier as well as regressor. So from the scikit-learn ensemble, you can pick the AdaBoost classifier. And in the AdaBoost classifier, you can specify what do you want to boost. So here we will decide to boost the decision tree, and you can specify how many estimators you wanted to do. So here one limitation is that since we cannot train them in parallel, so if you increase the number of estimators, that would take huge time for training the boosting approaches. But the trade-off is that even though the training time is large, but the accuracy, the results side, it is better. So that's what this essentially stands for. Explicitly mentioned about these algorithms, the SAMI.R and the learning rate is 0.5. So these are some factors that is used by the AdaBoost classifier for adapting these, assigning weights to the samples and so forth. And assigning the weights and how do you change the weights. So this is all controlled by these additional settings. So we can always go for the default, but I just wanted to explicitly mention about that. So once you create an AdaBoost classifier, then you can just call fit, then it will train it. So it will do sequentially train 100 decision trees, and then you can estimate the score. So here I just limited to 100, but if you increase it, you would get better results there as well. So this is the idea behind boosting, adaptive boosting. And there is an improvement to the boosting technique, which is called gradient boosting. So here also, both for bagging and boosting, we prefer the individual predictors to be decision trees, because that has shown to be the best compared to other types of models. So the boosting, generally they are sequential trainers. In the gradient boosting, what happens is that instead of assigning weights to the training samples, it is trying to work upon the residual error of the previous model. So to understand the intuition behind what do you mean by trying to address the residual error of the previous model, let me just try to explain it individually. Let us assume our first predictor is a decision tree. We set the maximum depth as 2, and we train the model. So let us say X and Y are our data set, and we are training our first decision tree. And now this Y is the actual prediction that we require. So this is the ground truth. And our first regression, this is a decision tree, so we call it as tree underscore regression 1. Its prediction and the actual value, there will be an error. So the difference between the actual value and the predicted value is what we call as error. So let us assume predicting the height of the participant. And if you had 100 participants, Y is the actual height of the participant, and this is the height predicted by the regression model, this particular decision tree regression model. So if you take the difference, there is an error in the height. So if you have 100 samples, it will be a vector containing 100 error values. So now we are going to construct a second decision tree with the same setting. And now we wanted to train the second decision tree on the residual error of the previous decision tree, which is this Y2. That is the difference in the prediction of the height. So now we are training this model. And we will again take the residual of the second decision tree. So Y2 is nothing but the residual error of the previous model. This is the prediction capability of, this is not actually predicting the height, the actual height of the participant, but it is trying to make predictions of this error such that the difference of this error is approaching to 0. So we expect that this y3 eventually becomes 0. Y3 or whatever, how many our decision trees that you try to boost, it will eventually become 0. And then you take a third decision tree, and now you are sort of boosting it with the gradient error of the previous decision tree, which is y3. And you keep on progressing this. So this is a sequential training process where we are trying to eventually reach to a prediction error that is eventually going to become 0. So for second decision tree to train, it has to wait for the prediction accuracy of the previous decision tree. So this is a sequential decision tree. Here is an example of boosting 3 decision trees. So this I am explaining it to understand the concept. This is not the way we will actually do gradient boosting, but there is a class defined in scikit-learn called gradient boosting regressor or gradient boosting classifier. There is both. And then you can create its object for gradient boosting regressor. You can specify a max depth of 2, and you can specify the number of estimators as 3. Then this is somewhat equivalent to what the procedure that we discussed here. So this is called the gradient boosting, and the results generally shows that the gradient boosting is more robust and outperforms even random forest in certain cases. So far, or even currently, the gradient boosting approach is at rank 1. And so far no new ideas have been introduced yet, but there are still scopes for how we can come up with some new ideas. I even heard recently about some work where they wanted to combine both bagging as well as boosting. So sort of trying to combine, but that is only an initial work, but not yet in a full-fledged way. But what I am saying is that there are some research efforts which is trying to combine bagging and boosting, and that will also be a very nice research problem to explore. Is there something that we can do? So one of the challenges is that bagging is sort of parallel training process, and it is taking random subsets of samples, and boosting is not, it's a sequential model. How we can combine them to come up with a more robust model is still a very challenging problem. So this is all about the boosting approaches. So now we will go. So there is one more thing that I wanted to address here. So when we are ensembling decision trees, there are certain challenges that we face. The first question is, how do we know how many estimators we should group together? So here I have mentioned as 3, at some place I have mentioned as 100. Previously I mentioned it as 500. So how do we know for a given problem how many estimators should be grouped together? Or even controlling the growth of the tree, like how much depth we should allow the tree to grow, or how many leaf nodes we should control. This cannot be predefined, or we cannot make some blind judgment on those numbers and simply put it and say that the performance of my ensembled model is like this. So there is a systematic approach by which we train ensembled models, and these parameters like the number of estimators or the maximum leaf nodes or the maximum depth, they are called hyperparameters. So we need some strategy to find out the best values for the number of estimators or leaf nodes to come up with the best ensembled model. So theory has been developed to perform the hyperparameter tuning experiments. So we will be also looking at how to perform hyperparameter tuning for bagging and boosting. So we will just specifically show for one particular model, and that idea can be extended to others as well. So even support vector machine, even though it is not a bagging or boosting approach, but still there are some hyperparameters for support vector machines as well. So whatever hyperparameter tuning strategy that we are discussing now is equally applicable to support vector machines as well. So that's what I wanted to highlight. And when you go for deep learning models, you quickly enter with a humongous amount of hyperparameter tuning. And the approaches that we are going to see here for hyperparameter tuning will not perfectly adapt to deep learning models. For deep learning, there are other tools to perform hyperparameter tuning. For example, if you are using Keras, then there is a hyperparameter tuning called Keras Tuner, which is really good. And if you are using, and there are also third-party libraries which perform hyperparameter tuning. One of the most popular tool is called Ray Tuner, and that if it doesn't matter whether you are using PyTorch or TensorFlow, you can use Ray Tuner to tune both PyTorch as well as TensorFlow. But the approach that we are going to see here is more specific to the classical machine learning approaches tried on bagging and boosting techniques. Okay. So we are picking up the same problem about forest cover type prediction. So what we will do is that let us look at how we can perform bagging. So let us look at the performance of random forest classifier on this specific problem, flower this tree type classification. So in this particular example, we are from the ensemble, we are picking a random forest classifier where we are ensembling 50 estimators, and we set the maximum depth as 25. And since this random forest can be parallelly trained, so we specify these n jobs as -1. So we have these random forest classifiers objects. Now we can train it using the 80% training data set and look at the score. And now we got something like 79% classification accuracy. I think it is a bit noisy. Is it really noisy for you? Is it okay? Is it audible or is it very noisy?
So it's noisy.
Sorry? It is
It's
noisy.
noisy, sir.
Okay. Let me just see. There is some work going on here. It's a problem. So let me just ask them. Let me see whether I can control this situation. Just wait for a couple of minutes. Hello? Yes.
I think,
So
sir, it's fine, sir. You,
yeah,
you maybe continue, sir.
yeah. Okay. So that situation is under control for some time. So let's
It's
hope.
okay, sir. No problem.
Okay. 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 So you can see this Google Colab now, right? It's fine.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So now when we use this bagging approach, we reach something close to 79% classification accuracy. So if you look at the previous place, when we used softmax regression, we could reach only 70% classification accuracy. But when we used random forest, we reached 79.6% classification accuracy. If we use a similar thing, like if we call gradient boosting classifier, and if we just do it. So here I just was trying to see whether I can just get a better result. I here try to boost 1000 uh, decision trees, and I controlled the max depth as 12, and I trained a gradient boosting classifier, and I was able to reach up to 80% classification accuracy. So you can see that the ensemble based approach is able to outperform the previous approach, and there are some controls within us. So now the question is, how do we control these hyperparameters? So we need some uh, well-defined procedures. So we can predict them, or we can even look at the uh, confusion matrix as we discussed previously. Even for any type of classification models, uh, we can obtain these confusion matrix as well. So now the important topic to look at is how do we perform hyperparameter tuning. So there are several hyperparameters that need to be tuned. So we are going to look at two important types of hyperparameter tuning approaches. So one is called grid search approach. The other one is called random search approach. So there are two approaches. They both implicitly involves cross-validation. So it's a cross-validation based hyperparameter tuning as a final decision making. Let us first look for grid search. So as I progress, I will tell you what is the significance behind this term grid and what is the significance behind random. So there are two types, grid search and random search. So let us look at that. So what we will first do is that we will create an object for random forest classifier without specifying. So we will just start with a default settings of the random forest classifier. So here I just prefixed with this HPT just to say that this is the classifier where we are performing hyperparameter tuning. So that is why I just put it like HPT. So this is the random forest classifier that we are going to uh, subject to the hyperparameter tuning experiment. And to apply this grid search, the functionality that is available with scikit-learn is this particular class called grid search CV. So this is available inside the model underscore selection, scikit-learn's model underscore selection. And in this random forest, what are we going to search is the number of estimators and the max depth. So we don't know how many number of decision trees we should ensemble. And for each of the decision trees, what should be the max depth that we should allow. So what we are going to do is we are going to pick these two hyperparameters and going to search through a possible set of values. So here what I am doing is that I am generating a set of values for number of estimators. So this is something called list comprehension. So this is something related with Python fundamentals. So using list comprehension, I am generating a range of values that need to be tested under number of estimators as well as the max depth. And I put that inside a dictionary. So anything that is encapsulated within the curly brace here, it is a dictionary. So this is the key and value pairs. So this is the key of the dictionary, and this is the value associated with that key, which is nothing but a list of values. And this dictionary is put inside a list. So there is starting as a list. So hyperparameter uh, grid, this is a list which contains a dictionary. And inside that dictionary, you have to specify what you are going to tune. So if you just look at the hyperparameter grid that I have estimated here, the max depth is these lists. So I wanted to try a max depth of 2. I want to try a max depth of 4, 6, 8, and so forth up to 14. That's what I generated here. And the number of estimators also, I wanted to try it like first try it with 10 estimators, 20 estimators, 30 estimators, and so forth. So what grid search CV will do is that it will do an exhaustive search. That means with, let us say, assume this. So think of this as two for loops. So this is a nested for loop. So it will first decide max depth of 2. So it will put max depth of 2 and it will try an ensembling of 10 decision trees and it will generate the result. It will try 20 decision trees. It will internally store the result. It will try for 30 decision trees and try the result. So with 2 as the max depth, it will try all these possibilities. And then with 4 as the max depth, it will try all these possibilities. And 6 as the max depth, try all these possibilities. So it is an exhaustive search. So if you have two hyperparameters to tune, it will try out all combinations and then eventually tell you which combination was the best performing. And not only that, so it is not only taking depth 2 and performs 10 estimators, but it will also perform cross validation. So when you are creating an object for grid search CV, you have to specify what is the estimator that you wanted to subject for hyperparameter tuning. So this is the model, hyperparameter random forest classifier. So that is what I wanted to choose as its estimator. And we have to specify the parameter grid. So this is this exhaustive list. So that's what we wanted to specify as parameter list. And we are saying perform a 5-fold cross validation. So whatever data we give, it will perform 5-fold cross validation for each combination. So with the 2 as depth, 10 as the number of estimators, it will perform a 5-fold cross validation. With the 2 and 20 combination, it will again do 5-fold cross validation and so forth. And once you have set all these, then you can train this model, this grid search CV. So this training, what it will do is that it will perform an exhaustive search of all these possible values, and then finally it will decide what is the best setting for a particular this particular random forest for the given problem. So once you hit or when you run this cell for the training, it might take like half an hour or even depending on the number of exhaustive combinations, it might even take several hours to finish because that many experiments it has to run to finally say what is the best possible model. So this fit will take like maybe hours. I think when I was running it for this small set of combination, it took something in the order of 20 to 30 minutes for one particular fit. So that is the reason why I don't wanted to run it live here. So I am showing you the results of pre-run results. So using this training data set, we are training it. So it will tell us that it is going to search for all these exhaustive combinations. That's what it is trying to do. And after, say, like half an hour, once this fit function is completed, now you can print the best parameters. So for this grid search, there is a member variable called best underscore params. So once you print that, it will tell you the max depth it found was 14 and the number of estimators 90 is the best configuration out of all these possible combinations that it has tried. So if you wanted to look at what is the best score achieved, there is also a variable best underscore score. So it says upon the cross validation, it achieved 76% classification accuracy. This cannot be straight away compared with the previous 79 or 80% classification accuracy that we got here, because this is not a cross validation result. This is the result of one particular run. But usually the cross validation results are slightly lower compared to a single instance running. Okay, so if you wanted to get the best estimator, like with all the configurations, with the correct configurations of the random forest classifier, you can just get the best estimator. It will print here. You can just copy paste it. So this is the best model. So here you can see the max depth is 14. It has suggested max depth is 14 is good. And the number of estimators 90 is good, because that's what we got here out of this experiment. If you wanted to internally analyze what are the various bookkeeping that it has done during these exhaustive search, you can also pick that. So there is something called cross-validation results, CV results, and there are these many details that it catches. So and this is a dictionary. So I'm just printing the key of those dictionaries. If you are interested in looking at what is the mean and the standard deviation, so this is how we look at the cross-validation results, the mean and the standard deviation, and among all the exhaustive runs, what is the rank it obtained. So we can print those results. So here you will see the mean and the standard deviation, and this is the rank. So if you just scroll down, you will see at some place you will pick a combination with rank 1. So here this is the average classification accuracy, and this is the standard deviation, the fluctuation you see. So based on these results, it has it told us what is the best configuration. So now there is a downside to the grid search. So here, since this exhaustive combination is small, it is okay. Say for example, 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6, 7. So here we have 7 values, and here we have 10 values. So there are 70 possible combinations here. So 70 combinations will be run. What if you wanted to search for more number of depths? Say for example, here you put 10, or here you put 100, and here also you put 100. Then it is like 100 times 100. So that many different combinations has to be run, and that could be computationally not feasible to search for all that possible, or maybe like 1 lakh different combinations. That is not possible. So under such situations, when one single run itself takes a lot of time, that is the place where you can use this random search. The random search, what it does is that for this hyperparameter list, it will not go through all the combinations, but it will pick some random combinations, and then it will run and give us a reasonably good configuration. Of course, grid search is the best, but there can be situations where grid search is not practically feasible. Under such scenario, you should opt for random search. And here also for these hyperparameters, you define a dictionary, say the number of estimators and max depth. You can define a range of values. And the only difference is that previously the dictionary was encapsulated within a list, but for random search, you only need it as a dictionary, not put this inside another list. And you create an object for this randomized search CV, and say you need to run it for 5-fold cross validation, and then you train it, and you look at this. So it is saying that depth is 14, but the number of estimator 50 is the best out of these combinations. So you get exactly the same result. So here you can see that it has ran only 10 combinations of the experiments, even though there are 70 combinations, but this random search has only tried some 10 combinations, and out of those 10 combinations, it has suggested a reasonable result.